DC All In Special Issue 1. Scott Snyder and Joshua Williamson writing, with Daniel SAMPERE on half the art, Wes Craig on half the art, and then in one 2-page spread, Dan Moore. So that's the way the art breaks down. So interestingly, so I read this digitally, and I didn't really know going in what I was getting here. It was quite clear though the way it played out. Like I was okay, I can see that if you're reading this physically, it probably flips over and you can go the other way. Blah blah blah. So the way it did it in the digital version is that so you get the first one first, which is the Booster Gold story, with obviously the JLU set up as well all throughout.
Yeah, that's the SAMPERE art.
Yeah, and it ends with a 2-page spread, and then what it just does is it goes back to the start. So the first page says 52 days later. The start of the second story says 52 days earlier. So I think it is meant to be read this way round. I mean, admittedly, if you're reading physical, you could probably just you might do it the other way, but
I think you could read it either way, and the story's still going to land. It's just
for sure.
It looks at the perspectives.
But I think it works better this way around for a couple of reasons, but mainly just for the surprise of what Darkseid is, and then you go back and read the back, like how that happened. That makes more sense to me, but obviously you do have the choice. So the idea is that both stories end in the same place, and you get the big 2-page spread in the middle has like sort of like text on both sides. One side says continued in the Absolute Universe, the other side says continued in the DC Universe.
Yeah. And even down to some of the layouts at the end they match each other a little bit.
Yes.
In the lead up to that page, which I thought was fun too.
I do have a critique a little bit about that actually, but I'll save that for when we actually get to talking about the scene. Because otherwise I did really like this. I love what they set up here. It feels like the start of a new era. And can I just say, Matt, until they brought it up in this issue, did you even remember the whole thing about like there's one other main world that's like Earth that's like close to it?
So yes, I did remember that, but that's because I thought like in my head that was going to be, because remember when Snyder was supposed to do Wonder Woman, and then it never came out. We got the teaser stuff.
Yeah, vaguely. Yeah.
And so I had thought that's where we were going, where there was going to be this Earth that was kind of the new JSA Earth. And that was going to be the alpha, right? Because that came first. I remembered it only in that, and then never again. Because I remember we had a discussion about all this, and then never ever again.
Yeah,
so,
this was the ends of death metal, right? For anyone who's trying to remember this, and part of the big thing at the end is they were setting stuff up for the stories going forward. Is that there was a weird second Earth, the Elseworld they called it. So which is what I think I'll stick to now because it's just a cool name.
It sticks. Yeah.
Right. So the Elseworld is kind of like a twin Earth, right? And it's close. But the thing is, though, is that they set it up, and then I'd forgotten about it because they didn't do anything with it, and it's been literally years. It was actually almost like a nice surprise when they mentioned it and went, wait a minute. So the big thing here with that, before we get to anything else, is simply that they're cut off from the multiverse. That's the current status in the DC universe, is that they cannot access the multiverse. But the one thing that they might be able to access, and they kind of do by the end of the story, is this Elseworld, this thing that's close, because it's so close in like frequency, if you will, to our Earth, or to the main Earth in the DC universe, that but not only is it the one that might still be accessible, although it's very difficult, is that ever since the multiverse got cut off, something weird's going on with it. It's starting to like rev up, and like the frequency's going nuts and haywire, and there's chaos.
They say that the vibration went from something regular to something chaotic.
Yeah. So something's happened there, and then a big part of, especially the second story, is filling out what's going on with that.
What had happened, yeah.
So yeah, turns out the Absolute Universe, which is what the Elseworld is, which is cool. I like that we've been hearing about the Absolute Universe for a while, and it turns out it's this Earth that was set up years ago. That's kind of neat.
Yeah, by Snyder, so it makes sense that Snyder's leading the charge here.
Yeah. No, that's cool. And then the other big thing, though, as we find out, is that this is Darkseid's Earth. Right, that's the big reveal of this issue, is that Darkseid, I mean, first of all, he's bonded with a Spectre, so let that settle in for a minute.
And he has an axe for a hand.
Right, but, well, we see how he loses his hand in the second story, actually.
Yeah.
But it turns out that the Absolute Earth is basically one that Darkseid's taken over and is built in his image So this idea, because there's a whole speech at the end of his story where, oh, this universe won't be based on like people striving to be the best. No, it's going to be harsher. The heroes are going to exist, but they're going to have a tougher time because their advantages are taken away. Wonder Woman's not going to grow up in paradise; she's going to grow up in hell. Batman's going to have no money, like, and so on and so on. All the things we know about the absolute versions.
I really thought too that Wonder Woman not in paradise but in hell. I was like, that is a metal album right there. I want to listen to that right now.
So anyway, so this is the stuff we're building up to. I just wanted to get the big sort of headline sort of mentioned briefly before we.
And when they announced this, what was that, back at Comic-Con? When the absolute stuff, I remember Snyder and Williamson both saying that was kind of the crux of the absolute universe was that this is Darkseid. This is kind of a universe built in his image, and I didn't know what that was going to mean. And now the fact that those Easter eggs from Metal and everything else, them taking that and making the story and having this polar opposite Earth, I like where the potential that's there.
I would be genuinely curious to know that if when they introduced that second world at the end of Death Metal, if this was always the plan, or if it's just a case of, oh, we want to do an Ultimate style thing with DC. Oh, and then Snyder says, hey, I set up that extra Earth that we never did anything with. Could we use that? Like, I wonder if this was always like vaguely the intention, or if it's something that they've just said, oh, hey, we can use that and do all this with it now.
Yeah, because there's always a thing when I was reading comics when I first got into there that, like, for me, the main difference between Johns and Morrison was that Johns would take stuff from the past, right, and do things with them. So, like, they would talk about the Blackest Night prophecy, and he turned around and made a story out of that or whatever. Whereas Morrison was taking things or doing stories and leaving these little Easter eggs for other people to use, right? Like, he used Professor Pig, but then used Professor Pig that one time, and then other people have been able to do it, right? So I'm always wondering what exactly goes on here with these writers. Like, are they seeding stuff out for later? Are they leaving stuff for them to come back to? But either way, it's kind of what makes comics really cool, is like there is all these things to build on, right? Yeah. If you have a story idea, you can jump in kind of at any point. You don't always need to reset. So yeah.
Yeah, and for better or worse, sometimes obviously this freedom leads to messy stuff. So there's
usually if your name rhymes with Josh Williamson,
yeah, it's so weird to have him be the co on this, just because it doesn't feel like he's that important to get into the absolute side of things. But I guess maybe the idea is that because he's on no, he's not on Batman. I keep saying that.
No,
I said that last week as well. He's on Superman. I guess just because he's on one of the big books of the all inside. If
I almost feel like they wanted Johns, but Johns is doing his own thing now over with the creator owned. Do they look at Williamson and go, well, you're good enough. I feel like you guys are close enough.
I feel though technically Wade is still filling this role, and because he's doing the new Justice League book, and they set that up alongside this stuff. And hell, it's the Justice League that are in this book, and it's one of the stories. So it kind of just feels like Wade, because he was doing Absolute Power, and then he was going into his Justice League book, that he probably just didn't have time to be the co-writer on this, so Williamson just kind of got, you'll do instead, right? Wade's too busy.
And I feel like Williamson writing with, there's the other thing that I like too, is that it said like that first story is listed by Williamson and Snyder, and then the other one is listed by Snyder and Williamson, right? And you can feel the difference between them, but they also don't feel purely what we would expect from those two creatives, so I do like it feels collaborative too. So maybe that's kind of the vibe that they're going forward now, is that Absolute's going to be more or less more collaborative than we thought.
Well, both, all in Absolute. Keep in mind, it's two branches now. We have to. Yes.
Yeah. That's what I meant. I meant the big, huge thing. The meta concept of it all.
It feels like maybe we're back to like almost like, not that we're doing a book like that, but like the 52 era where we've got like multiple creators all driving the ship kind of thing. Yeah. Steering the ship is what people actually say. I said driving.
Yeah,
for some
you don't
reason.
want to. Yeah, I don't think you drive a ship.
You can drive it if you want.
I mean, you can if it like Miami Vice. They definitely drive a
boat. So yeah, like basically the story, the first story starts 52 days earlier. Is the Justice League making their new membership cards, which has got like a bit of like magic in it, a bit of Green Lantern tech, a bit of Mr. Terrific tech, a bit of everything. And it's like, hey, we need everyone. They do a little recap of like every event we've had since like Rebirth, pretty much. And
it's been a bit of a bit. Right? It's been a lot.
I'll be honest, I was looking at some of these and going, okay, I'm trying to remember exactly what some of these were. Like, there's a green volcano. I'm pretty sure that was that one that started...
Lazarus. That was Lazarus Planet.
Wait, is that what that is?
That was Lazarus Planet, yeah, because remember, he had the Lazarus rain that went down.
No, I thought this was the one that made... remember we got those... what were those old... Like, we got Sideways and all those books from it.
No, I don't think that was. That was the Dark Earth. That was from the Metal.
That was from Metal,
stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is all post-Rebirth.
But there was a mountain. There was a mountain in Gotham, which is...
No, there was.
Yeah.
There was, and that's where the Challenger's Mountain came from. That popped up in Gotham. Right, but this right here with the green, that was from Lazarus Planet. I know that much.
That feels too early in this, but yeah, they've got Nightmares, which, you know, that's less said about that.
Less said about the better.
Beast World, though, quite like. I guess that's meant to be the House of Brainiac stuff, which I guess they're counting here. And then obviously Amaze was from, what do you call it?
So we have the Death of the Justice League, right, on one side. And then Lost, is that Infinite, what was that, the Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths?
I get, probably, because the Titans were heavily involved in that, so probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it's only the events since the end of Snyder's Justice League run then. I just assumed it was all a rebirth and was counting things from before.
Yep.
So I see Starfire get a card, see, what we call him? Speedy Arsenal? What do we call him now?
Roy,
yeah.
Yeah.
Robot Man declines. Metamorpho is like, maybe. Supergirl's in. Damien throws it away in tuts, because of course he does.
I love it.
Yeah, good stuff. But then it becomes a Booster Gold story, which I'm sure delighted Matt to no end. So it's a very somber Booster Gold, though. He's not in the mood to be his usual self.
No, he's been through some things, man. Booster is not about the sponsorships anymore. He's just like, I am stressed out. I accidentally became important at work, and it's ruining my life.
and Skeets keeps trying to like sort of make him be like his old self, which was cracking me up. But he's like, nah, maybe I should just go home. Maybe it's time to actually go back to my own time period. But this is where we get the selfie though, where he says, "All together now, Guy Gardner sucks," and then all the kids say it, and they look delighted as they say it. It's great.
I didn't know him and Guy were on opposite sides of things. I mean, it makes sense, but I never thought that Booster had hard feelings about Guy.
Like I said, I think Booster. I've never quite given him the credit he deserves as a character, I don't think.
Like, I always thought Booster was dumb, but he's not that dumb.
I've seen the light. I've seen the light. Booster clearly has some layers to him that I was not appreciating. He's went up a whole rank at least. He's went from at least if he was D tier to me before, he's C tier now at the very least. Absolutely. So he's feeling a little bit. So anyway, Superman shows up and kind of says, "Hey, that was a good job there, saving those people in that burning building." And Superman's narration kind of, it basically says, Booster's always had a good heart. He kind of gets in his own way, but like he deserves a chance. And Booster gets the membership card. I love that it says access limited to show that he's not an A tier Justice Leaguer. He's definitely on the D squad.
They know Booster gets into some shenanigans.
Actually, I say that it literally says tier gamma, which is that G tier? Is that what that means?
Yeah, I don't know the Greek alphabet off the top, but G is pretty mid.
Yeah. Alpha, beta, is gamma third?
Alpha, beta, delta. I think gamma might even be fourth.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Again, I don't know the Greek alphabet that well.
Hey, that's right. They've got it right then. I said D or C tier. He's D or C tier. Like, they literally say it on his membership card.
Yeah.
Perfect. Anyway.
There you
go. So, he talks about how he saw the blank version of this in the museum and the superheroes in the future and all that, and he's all excited about it. So, we get a meeting, all the members coming to the Watchtower. We see Tim Drake there, Nightwing, Yara's there. Apparently, Renee Montoya Question is going to be like the guard of the Watchtower. That's an interesting.
Yeah, she's the sheriff. We've talked about that.
Yeah. Because our new book said something about that, right? Yeah. See, this is the thing. I never remember those solicits, so it's always a nice surprise when they pop up again in the books.
As someone that loves Montoya's Question, anytime she pops up, I'm going to remember. So, and I think that's a great concept for her as well, because, we've done her as the commissioner and all this other stuff, but I think here as a member of the superhero community, but outside of it as well, I think that fits her real well. And again, any Renee Montoya, I'm here for.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Wade is good at the ensembles. He loves all the DC characters. So you really do feel like it's not even just the characters from his time period that he likes. Like he puts in good bits with Damian. He has like Yara prominently front and center. It really does feel like he respects like all the new creations that have come.
Yeah, I feel like we all know he loves Superman, right? But I feel like he loves DC.
Yes.
And that comes through when you have a page of them all assembled, and you just look at the, like you said, the across the timeline characters here. It's not, there's not just all Silver Age characters he really likes. It's everyone.
So. Yeah, I see New Superman there, but you've also got Dr. Light. I see, Yara, but I also see what other sort of deep pills he got in here that I could point out. I guess Fire and Ice are pretty relatively deep.
Fire and Ice, yeah. It looks like
Firestorm's in there. That's not
Firestorm's
exactly
there. That looks like Black Lightning. I'm not quite sure. Steel's there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard with some of these profiles.
I don't think we have to list them all, because I think the whole point of this JLAU is that pretty much any hero is technically actively in the Justice League now. Right. So as soon as they're done with their big speech, though, alarms go off. Some weird like speech starts coming out of some of the characters upside down, and ultimately says Darkseid is. Can I just say that I love that Tom King Darkseid book, or Mr. Miracle, I should say, but the Darkseid book in that. The fact that Darkseid is became such a staple again of the character, to the point where here it's not only used, but is then like, it's manipulated by the end of Darkseid's side of the story, where he's like, no, Darkseid, was, Darkseid ends, now it's what Darkseid can be. Kind of all that stuff. I'm like, I love that they're playing with this.
He's changed his state of being, right? He's no longer he is, but yeah. And I like the upside down here, because it like, I didn't realize this was a flip book, right, until I started reading this. And then when we got to the upside down, I was like, oh, okay, this is different. But yeah.
So obviously they're expecting Darkseid because of what was been said, and there's some Omega beams coming out of the boom tube or whatever. And sure enough, Darkseid pops out, but he's got a cloak and some other features here, and they're like, shit, he's the Spectre. Darkseid's the Spectre. How did that happen? So there's a bunch of fighting, and effectively they all quickly decide during the fight that they're going to have to separate Spectre and Darkseid. It's the only, they're not fully bonded yet, so if they can separate them, it'll deal with everything. And ultimately, this is what Darkseid wants. In fact, he says thank you, Darkseid ends, as they succeed in this, and it creates a rift, like a tear in space-time, which is going to the Elseworld universe. And it seems like Darkseid wanted this, and they're like, shit, can we send someone through there to check out where he went and what's going on? And it turns out that the only person that is safe to go is someone who has a lot of tachyons from time travel. And who does that sound like? In walks Booster Gold. I love that Booster's been dead serious as he says, oh, someone like me. And then Skeets is like, dramatic entrance, sir, one of your best. And Booster's like, no, I'm not being silly. I'm like, no, not now. Not now, Skeets.
Well, because he knows this could be his last mission, right? Like, his first mission as a member of the Justice League could be his last, because this is huge. Also, I don't want to gloss over that they empower Superman with magic to fight Darkseid, because that's going to be kind of an essential conceit of the other story, as Superman versus Darkseid. And then also,
but important to note though, the magic only battles the Spectre part of him. It doesn't do anything against Darkseid. It's only the Spectre element in the mix that it's fighting.
It's just there, yes. And that after that rip in space time, we've seen before, because Williamson loves to talk about Darkseid's crack.
There's a new Darkseid found a new crack.
I've waited since Wednesday to make that joke, so I just didn't want to gloss over it. And I got
that's fair.
So
that's fair. So yeah, Booster lands after a bit of a bumpy ride in a city that's kind of metropolis. There's a daily planet, or it may not be called that. We just see the word daily. It may have a different name, but there's a big Omega symbol on the building.
This place looks like hell.
Yeah, there's fire everywhere, right? It's really like Earth/apocalypse, and Booster has lost Skeets, and Skeets is the ticket home. Skeets is the one that's programmed to teleport him back via some tech. But he's like, shit, I think I know where I am. Now, why Booster knows where he is interesting. That is something that I'm sure we'll go into in
Yep.
whatever story continues this. Which I actually don't know if this is going to be in Justice League Unlimited or if it's just going to be, like, we're going to be waiting a while for the event that's going to come out of it. But...
Yeah, because they have teased that there's going to be an absolute / all-in thing that the Absolute Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, all those other books are building to.
Yeah, it seems like we might be sort of laying low in this until then, would be my guess. But basically, we see it's like a Legion ring, but it's like it's a Darkseid ring.
It's got the Omega symbol, but with the star in the middle. So yeah.
And then the big reveal in the 2-page spread is that on this Earth, Darkseid has a legion. Right, so it's the Legion of Superheroes, but it's a Legion of, well, Darkseid, I guess. I don't know what you'd call it. It probably has a name. We'll probably find out.
I would just call it Darkseid's Legion, right? That makes it sound like, that sounds proper scary.
Yeah. So, and that's your big 2-page spread. So that's the first half, right? That's the Booster GLU half of the story.
Yep.
Second half of the story, with the Wes Craig art, is the dark side of this, and it says 52 days earlier. And I like this being second, naturally, because I think going back 52 days to discover why Darkseid or how Darkseid got to that point is interesting. So it turns out he had the creator of the Mother Box build something, and we don't find out until much later what it is.
Yeah.
But builds a machine, and he has to sacrifice his own blood to, like, get power it, so that's why he cuts off his own hand and pours blood into this wish machine, and that's when Calabac and like some of the other notable characters on Apocalypse like, hey, we've assembled an army of aliens, since the heroes are weak from what's going on, in absolute power, we can go and take over Earth. And Darkseid's like, no. And the main crux of this story, and this is quite interesting, is that when the multiverse got closed off, it sent like a ripple or something through space and time, blah blah blah. And Darkseid got a sense of something, which it's kind of vague in this issue, but we can kind of discuss what we think it means based on some of the things that he says and what's said to him. But he's basically realized that he's playing a role that he's supposed to be playing, and this idea that there's always a balance, and that Darkseid is supposed to exist to have this balance between the good and the bad. He's kind of necessary, but he is just fulfilling a role that he's supposed to have. And as soon as Darkseid realizes that he's filling this role, he's like, well, I don't want to just fill a role that someone says I'm supposed to have. I want more. I want to sort of go into the unknown. I want to conquer. I'm not. It basically like that. This is a weird meta way of putting it, but it's kind of like he's realized that he's just a character in a comic book, and he wants to be something greater.
Well, yeah, there's that. This is Darkseid's midlife crisis.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
You're right, because they bring in this army, and that's exactly what Darkseid always does. And now, because of his tie to the universe, right? Because we've known for a while now that Darkseid is a singular entity.
Yes.
Right. There's only one Darkseid across the multiverse, and yet there's the Omniverse, which Snyder had played with in Metal and whatnot. And so in this Omniverse, he's at the mercy of that ebb and the flow, right? So when things are going great, and the energy is flowing through him, that's where we get these big Darkseid stories, and Darkseid is and stuff.
It's kind of explained later on, actually, that part of what's going on here is that because he's cut off from the rest of the multiverse, and he's the only Darkseid in the multiverse, is that because he is this like totem of existence, where he has to balance out everything and be this opposition to the good of something like Superman. But in many ways he's more special because there's still multiple Supermen across the multiverse, right? But there's only one Darkseid. Is that all of his like power had to spread out, like all of his influence and power spread out across all these universes because it had to, because he had to kind of be a force in all of them. That feeling of Darkseid had to be felt in every single universe.
Yes.
But because they've been closed off from the multiverse, all of that like energy, or whatever you want to call it, that aura has come back to him, and now he feels unfulfilled because he's just up with all this extra Darkseid,
with nothing to do.
Pretty much. So like that's kind of like what's driving him here, and he kills Calabac. Calabac's dead for now.
He's like, wait, blood. I need more blood. You're my blood. You're just like, oh no.
So he's dead, and he goes looking for someone. We don't know who he's looking for at first. We see him go around like hell and heaven, It turns out that he wanted to see Eclipso, who he calls Kala, which
right, right. Because remember, Eclipso was the first spirit of vengeance, right? He was the in the biblical tales, he's the one that does the 7 plagues and
I'm
all
not
this
going
other
to
stuff.
pretend to have remembered any of that. I just
Well, now you know, so this is why. And also it's very, here where it feels like Eclipso is also kind of a singular being, right? The concept with religion and big G God in the DC universe is the concept of the source, right?
Yeah.
Or the one above all. And so the fact that there is a source wall that divides everything, and that Eclipso was meant to be this first spirit of vengeance for the source or big G God, and that's who's standing in the way now of Darkseid.
Yeah, but anyway, like again, Eclipso's just next on the list and who he's looking for. He kills Eclipso as well. He boom tubes him to the middle of a sun, so Eclipso seemingly is dead. That's the thing
for now. Well, because the Black Diamond's still there, right? So as long as the Black Diamond's around, Eclipso can come back.
Yeah. But we finally get to who he's looking for, and it's not really a surprise given that you've already read the first story, but he was looking for Jim Corrigan. He was looking for the Spectre, and he wants to bond with it. The Quintessence show up to try and like be like, hey, yeah, like,
you can't do this.
No.
You're going against the order of the universe.
Yeah, this is bad. And then we find out what he built earlier, what he had built, which is a wish machine. He gets a wish, and you can't do anything about it, and that actually freaks them all out because they're actually quite confident when they show up. They go, well, look, the Spectre only bonds with who the Spectre wants to bond with, so there's not really any risk. But then he mentions this wish machine, and they're like, oh shit. So he's like, I wish to bond with the Spectre, and sure enough, we get this big page of the Spectre kind of being almost pulled from Jim Corrigan, and like being drawn toward with all these green lines kind of like connecting them.
So the wish machine, that was the thing at the center of Final Crisis, right? And Superman had to go into that.
I don't remember, but I'm glad you're saying this came up before, because it did feel a little bit out of nowhere to me. So the fact that this was in another crisis that Darkseid was heavily involved in, I like that. And
so I feel like that was a miracle machine, and that Superman, and the reason that Superman had to do it is because he would wish the best for everybody, and that's eventually, what brings about the end of Darkseid. It's been a while since I read Final Crisis, but I distinctly remember that being the plot point of Superman Beyond.
Oh, it's been a long last time. It's been like 14 years since I read that now. But I think I like this side of the story as well. I mean, I like the first half probably a bit more in some ways, but I think what made this one work is that it was really interesting just trying to figure out what Darkseid's goal was and what was going on with them. Like, why does he feel like his purpose has changed? Because he's saying things because it gets to the point where he's fighting the Justice League and whatnot, and he's like, we've got this narration coming in from Spectre and narration from Darkseid kind of talking backwards and forwards, and this is where a lot of the stuff I said earlier, that it kind of explains this idea of his energy being spread out and him being like an important part of the universe, and that he should be content with being this important part of the universe. It's it's one of the most important things in the multiverse. Why can't you be content with that? And it's like, because he's had a glimpse that there's something more that he's not had access to, and that's what he wants to go do now. So it is interesting. Like, I do think it's an interesting direction to take Darkseid in. We see that kind of inside his head, or inside like the spirit of him. You see like Darkseid's spirit fighting off like lots of Spectre spirits as he's like sort of fighting to like keep control or whatever. So yeah, it's super interesting. And there's like references to like Darkseid's other big things. You see a panel that's from Final Crisis, one from what story is the Superman and Supergirl punching him from? That's a famous story.
I'm not sure. I think that was just that's one of the 70s ones, I think.
Sure, okay. I recognized the moment and went, oh, I've seen that somewhere. So yeah, but it gets to the same point where they separate the Spectre from him, and he's like, no, Darkseid ends, and then we see like this lets him go through this rift, take this Elseworld that was still forming, hadn't really settled into anything, and sort of turn it into a stable world that's going to last. And is like, no, I'm going to build a world where the heroes still exist, but they're challenged. And good isn't the default and the opposite's the villainous. No, heroes are going to be the villainous ones in a world that is fueled by whatever. And this is where you get a glimpse of the other, the absolute versions of the Trinity. You see Wonder Woman on her like dragon thing, or whatever you call it.
Again, metal as hell.
Yeah. You see Batman with his big chunky logo fighting off some dudes.
His axe logo.
Yeah.
Oh God.
There.
And then a Superman who looks like he has lava hands.
Yes.
And lava feet. I'm like, oh, okay, this is.
Yeah. I don't think the people of this world are going to take to Superman quite the same way they normally do.
No, and just again, the point that it's almost as if there must have been a dark side, right? Because Superman was this embodiment of hope, and which was the opposite of Darkseid, right? Because when they talk about the equation that he's always after, the anti-life, right? It's always this thing where it's about control and the absence of hope. And so now you have Superman, who's this being of hope in this world that's all about control, right? And it's like, well, is this Superman singular, right? Like, is he the only one of his kind here now? So I like that balance that they're bringing here.
Yeah, so Darkseid talks about building this world where he can be the most powerful he's ever been, grow 1,000 feet tall. Whether he's been literal or not, we'll find out, I guess.
Yeah.
But it is worth mentioning, though, right at the tail end of this, he does say, and when I have become, because he says Darkseid will be, and when I become him, I will return for that other world and crush it. So he does ultimately want to come back to the main Earth and kill all the heroes and like finally win. So that is still part of his goal. He still wants to do that. I think it's interesting going forward what we're going to do with the Absolute Universe, because I suspect that, like, I don't think, like, I'm sure they'll fight a bit, but I don't think the whole point of it is going to be that the heroes of the Elseworld are going to be the villains per se. Like, I suspect that ultimately they're going to prevail, and like maybe with the help of the heroes in the main Earth, they'll actually like change their world. They'll resist, like, maybe the ultimate like end for Darkseid in the story is the realization that even when he built a world in his image, that eventually the heroes still found a way to like get through it and like inspire everyone or whatever,
He has to still play his role, and that's where he's at,
Yeah, I'm sure we're ages away from getting to that point, obviously, but it's interesting to think about. But I do appreciate though that like this darker world where we've got all these darker versions of characters for these different books. I do like that there's just like a big reason for it to exist. It's not just like a random thing. Oh, let's just do a dark world. No, they're building a story around it. It's all tying into Darkseid. Like, I like how it feels like a part of the current continuity as opposed to just, hey, we're doing, and this is not to shit on Marvel, because Ultimate Spider-Man was great back in the day, but it was very much. I mean, but it was very much just, oh, let's just do different versions of the characters, right? That was it. That was all it was.
And the whole point with the Ultimate Universe was, let's do these stories that aren't mired in continuity, right? And now we're kind of past that in comics, where if you have a story to tell, some of these companies just, well, put it out. That's what Black Label is meant for, right? Like, we're at that where not everything has to be part of the tapestry. So Ultimate Marvel played its role, and then it started to get mired in continuity. And then the Ultimate Universe had its own type of stuff, and now they've just relaunched the Ultimate Universe, right?
It also feels like these absolute books aren't really designed with the intention of doing, let's do a classic version of these characters that isn't, mired in continuity. It doesn't feel like it's doing that for a start. So that makes it different. Plus, I also do kind of like that this idea of the absolute stuff being the Elseworld does make it feel like they're taking something that's like a big part of DC's past, because I would say that Elseworlds as a concept is a lot more prominent in DC than the what if stuff is in Marvel. Yeah. So actually building like a big long form story out of the idea of there being like an Elseworld that's actually in the canon of like, oh, there's an Elseworld and it's this other universe and it's going to play into the stories is quite interesting, I think.
Yeah, the concept of a multiverse is so baked into DC because of the Flash of Two Worlds, right? That it just feels like the Elseworld concept is, it's because it's not unique, right? But it is part of DC as much as some of these other things are.
Yeah, the only thing that's a shame now is that because like movies and Marvel movies, but not just Marvel movies, are really like doing a lot of this stuff right now because it's a easy excuse to have actors come back that shouldn't be back. Everyone's kind of sick of it, and it feels like a crutch, like an easy crutch to just get away with doing stuff.
It just feels like, oh, multiverse. That's a buzzword right now. How can we have our own multiverse?
Yeah, it's just an
What can we
excuse to do stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, well, and then smart people find out ways around it, and like here we have the Elseworld now. So yes, the multiverse is gone, and they can't connect it, but there is this Elseworld, so they can still tell a story of a different Superman, Batman, etc. Right? And they're not breaking any of that, and it does feel different and unique.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, all I'm really trying to say is that this, like, I wouldn't really be blaming anyone if they said I'm sick of multiverse stuff, regardless if it's DC or not. I really couldn't blame them if they are. I give DC a bit more of a pass, although that said, I am glad that the greater multiverse is gone. I think I like the idea of just having one alternate world that we're going to really, because, I mean, we're going to have multiple books set on it. We're going to get at least 4 absolute books that are all set in the same Earth, and we're going to flesh it out. I think that's more interesting to me than a million cameos from like 50 different Earths with different versions of, you know, characters times and time over.
For sure.
Having one focused alternate Earth where we can just do one sort of like war between two worlds sounds far more focused and interesting to me than, you know, sometimes what the multiverse stuff can become, right? Obviously, sometimes it's great, but sometimes it can be a bit, just, you know, for the sake of having a million things and cameos and whatever. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, the critique I was going to mention just before the end here is that I did think it was weird that the page before we get to the 2-page spread again. So again, in the physical book, I assume the 2-page spread's just there once and you just get to it from either side. Yeah. Is that the page before the end here is that it's basically just from Booster Gold's perspective again, and I thought that was a bit weird. I thought it should have still been from Darkseid's perspective, get into the same moment, but
to see him come through. But it still kind of is. It's not fully Boosters because it looks, everything's kind of third person, right? Like we're looking at Booster from across the way versus over his shoulder.
I mean, I guess, but we're still like we weren't looking at Booster. I don't know. I just it felt like it could have been more like distinct before we go to that same page at the end. But it's a minor quibble. I'm not going to. So
I want to talk about the Legion real quick. So if you're gonna add something else, because this might be a slight tangent.
Oh, right, okay, just in general, you want to talk about the Legion. I was just going to mention the art here. Obviously, the first story, which is SAMPERE, is excellent. SAMPERE's also been killing it on Wonder Woman, and seeing that applied to the entire Justice League, it made it feel like big and epic. I think having a very different artist for the Darkseid story makes a lot of sense as well, because it is coming from this much darker place. It's building a much different tone. And I generally liked it. I didn't like it as much as the SAMPERE stuff. I think I like the way it does some of the like, see when we get to like Darkseid and he's got like flames coming out of him and stuff towards the end. I think that stuff looks great. When it's doing like more Darkseid as a dark god in space and there's like apocalyptic planets, great. I think when we're seeing characters with like human faces, I'm less into it.
Yeah, that Superman where it says where the but then there's Superman who's if there's a being that embodies that hope, that energy, it's him. That Superman's rough.
So Superman's face there is pretty nasty.
I do like that the Wes Craig stuff is a fair bit moodier too. Like it's got the heavier lines, heavier inks, and
it's the sort of thing where no, I like this artist better, admittedly, but it feels like you could have had Mike Perkins do this story.
For sure.
Or even Montos would have been another pick that would have filled the same kind of role. But that said, though, it still works. Obviously, it makes sense that it's darker, it's moodier, and all that. But anyway. All right, Matt, what do you want to say about the Legion?
So the Legion, one of the big stories that came out in the 80s was the Great Darkness Saga, and it was this whole big thing, and it was playing with the Legion and their future and where they stand. And at the end, the Great Darkness is revealed to be Darkseid, right?
Okay.
And that they end up defeating Darkseid, the Legion does, but he curses them. And this curse writers ended up doing a thing. So the fact that we bring the Legion back around here as Darkseid's Legion, right, as almost a take on this is the Great Darkness now, right? Is that the Elseworld or whatever is that, Darkseid 1 type vibe. But not only that, the Legion exists because of Superman, right? They were these teens that in the future that were inspired by the legend of Superman. So what's the one thing that Darkseid can do to really drive home his thing is to corrupt the concept of the Legion, and now that they exist solely for him.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, Legion's
right.
inspired by Superman, and that makes sense that Darkseid's world would
Right.
have his take on that. Yeah.
Right. So I do like that it's seemingly, you know, they're the ones too that Booster would have been familiar with, because he is from the, you know, even further in the future than they are, because he did steal the time bubble, right? So, you know, him running into the Legion here, I think was another smart piece.
It is interesting though. Booster's saying he knows where he is. That implies that in the future, like this did happen, and like it was in the museum. Hey, remember the whole Two Worlds thing where like Darkseid ruled another Earth? Blah blah blah.
Yeah. That's the other piece of it as well. So yeah, I just wanted to point out the Great Darkness Saga, and this seemingly fits into that idea of Darkseid winning, and this is what it would be like. But unlike when he fought the Legion, he actually succeeded here.
Yeah. All right. What you rating DC All In Special?
I'm gonna give this a straight 8.
Honestly, I was kind of tempted to go with a 9. I think I'm going to knock it down to an 8.5, just because the art in the Darkseid story, well, at times I think it's really appropriate and looks great. There's also stuff that doesn't look that great face-wise and whatnot. So, but no, as far as like kicking off this next era of DC, I like the stuff they've set up, and it's definitely made it interesting to check out these Absolute books, which I think the first one's next week. So. It's not long before we get to start digging into things and seeing how it all pans out.